Well, welcome. Here we are in the midst of the silly season, coming down to the end. And as always, I'll start with my soapbox speech saying I'll never ask you to vote for any specific candidate, but I'll beg you to vote. There's plenty of chances between the Town Crier Show, the Senior Center, the Citizens for Milford, and one thing that I think is superb is the forum at the high school for the students. Plenty of times, as well as this show, to get to know the candidates and figure out which one is more like you, whoever you are of the 6 people that watch, and who will really carry out what you feel is the vision for Milford's future. So, okay, enough soapbox. Let's start with introductions.
Good evening, Al. My name is Mike Walsh. I'm chairman of the Milford Board of Selectmen currently.
Hi, Al. I'm Amy Clifford, and I'm a candidate for Milford Board of Selectmen.
So, Mike, you picked the magic number. So we'll start with the first question, as you both know, that I always ask. Mike, I'm from Milford. Why should I vote for you?
Al, as I said to you the night that I was on the show with you alone, my dedication to this community, my commitment to this community. I've been in this community over 30 years. I've lived and worked in this community over 30 years. And if you look at my track record, the things that I've been involved in, the committees that I've been on, I started with Sacred Heart Parish Council. I'm currently on their finance committee, but I went to the Youth Commission, got involved with the Army renovation, did 9 years on the Milford School Committee, 2 years as chairman, and currently sitting in my 2nd year on the Board of Selectmen as chairman. That being said, though, Al, is that I think it's important to me that people understand that I'm the type of person, I get involved. I don't criticize. I get involved. I work with people very, very well. I try to find solutions to get answers to move forward. And that's why I would ask people to vote for me.
Thank you. Amy, I'm from Milford. Why should I vote for you?
Thanks, Al. First, I want to mention that I have a bunch of events coming up that I think one way to know that you want to vote for me is to attend one of the events I have, some old school open houses at my house, also an event at Craft Roots Brewing. To figure out when those are, you can go to eventbrite.com, which is eventbrite.com, and then search Amy Clifford, AMI Clifford, and then you can track any of the events. If you want to come get to know me, have other questions, you want to tell me what's going on with your town. So I think that you would want to vote for me and other folks in Milford because I'm a fresh voice to the Town of Milford Board of Selectmen. I'm also representative of a common sense majority that is in our town that doesn't participate. So as I mentioned, we have a core group of very active folks who do participate in town government, but we have over 80% of the people that live in Milford that don't. So I'm a fresh voice. A lot of folks, since I decided to run, said that's something that we could use here in Milford, a fresh voice. And I'm a mom, I'm a lawyer, I'm a very successful business person, I've been a town meeting member, I own property, I've been a landlord, I've been a tenant, I've done all those things. So I represent and can steward for the majority of Milford.
Now, you're going to put up the events on the TV bulletin board?
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out how to get them up, get them all together. So, yes.
Well, once you have them listed, you can just send the JPEGs to the studio and they'll list them out.
Great.
Mike, do you have events coming up?
Al, I've had long conversations with, as you know, my family, who's always been very involved in my campaign, and very, very close friends that are involved in my campaign. And I'm still deciding, Al. As you know, I served 9 years on the school committee, so I ran for office for the school committee 3 times, and 3 times I ran events. It's a lot of work for people. I'm going to do something, Al, but I'm probably going to fund my campaign personally myself. And I was talking to my daughter the other night about it. Maybe closer to the election, I may throw a really nice cocktail party and Justin, invite everybody to just come on and let's just have some conversation and just have a nice night out. So I haven't made my mind up. Do I have any planned right now? No, because in my mind, at this point, I'm seriously thinking of funding my campaign myself.
Well, hopefully, if you do have them, you'll list them up on the bulletin board.
I will, absolutely.
So that people can look at the Milford TV website
Yeah.
or scroll through
Yep.
and see them. I'm going to ask you both, what are the 3 biggest challenges that you think the Board of Selectmen will face? But to make it a little smoother and fairer, I'll ask you for the first one, then let Michael talk about his first, then I'll go back to the second.
Sure.
So, Amy, out of 3 that I'm going to ask you, what do you think the biggest challenge you would face as selectman?
Okay, great question. The biggest challenge that I see as selectmen is, like I mentioned, the majority of the folks who are not involved. We've got 17% turnout at the last election, and of course, politics at the national level is what everyone is talking about and consumes a lot of time and energy. But I think that there's a disconnect between the majority of people that live in Milford, understanding that their vote is important at a local level, and it actually can make a difference here, and that their involvement makes our democracy in town work better. So without a vigorous public debate, which we can't have one if there's less than 20% of people participating, we're just never going to get to the right right results for the town. So.
It's interesting because in the last 3 years, you remember we had a school committee race decided by 13 votes.
Right.
And another race decided by less than 24 votes. So when you think of a town of 28,000, I think we have 16,000 registered, or 18,000.
18 and some change.
18,000 registered voters. 13 people could have decided, or did decide, by not showing up, the school committee race.
Yeah.
Al, I'm sorry. I say this all the time, Al. In Tip O'Neill's book, Man of the House, he makes a statement, and he used to talk about it all the time, all politics is local. And I used to say all the time, when I was a school committee member, that I was spending $46 million a year of taxpayer money, and would be very hard to get people to come out and vote in a local election. As a selectman, I'm spending roughly $100 million of taxpayer money in the same situation, but yet people will come out and vote in the national election, and what goes on in Washington, D.C. really doesn't take a big effect in the community of Milford, have as much impact as the impact as a school committee member or as a member of the Board of Selectmen does on you locally.
Well, you're right, because what we decide as a town meeting in, May, within 2 months, it's how heavy that hand reaches into my pocket.
That's correct.
Because July 1st, we start spending to a new budget.
Right.
So, Michael, the biggest challenge you think you'd face as selectmen?
In the town of Milford right now is the purchase of the Milford Water Company. It's a big number, Al. As you know, we got approved at the town meeting to spend up to $63 million, and it's a big chunk of money. As you know, it's going back and forth, and there are things that I can't talk about, but it's not there. But it's something that the majority of the people believe that should be done. And some of the reasons that I think it should be done, and I speak very openly about this all the time, is that, and it works very well in the sewer department. And some of the examples, I say, if you call the Milford Water Company at 5 minutes of 5 on a Friday night, and you have brown water, an odor in your water, it's staining your clothes in your washing machine, chances are you're not going to get anybody out to your house or anybody to return your phone call till Monday.
I was going to say, at 5 to 5, they may call you. At 5:01,
right,
you stand no prayer.
And as you know, Al, we've already picked the the water commissioners, although they're not active right now until the purchase of the water company goes through. But I tell people, one of the reasons, and there's many reasons of why we should buy the water company, and again, I can't get into them, but there's many reasons, is that you call me at home, my email, my cell phone number are on the town website. I get phone calls on my cell phone all the time. You call me at 7 o'clock on a Friday night and tell me you got brown water, and I call one of the commissioners, I'm going to say to the commissioner, I'll meet you there. I'll meet you there, because as your selectman, as a town father, I'm your voice. I'm not going to let you sit home all weekend long. I'm not going to let you sit home on Friday night with brown water and an odor. I can't promise you we can fix it that night, but I want to show you that we as a town care. And that's just some of the obstacles that we're dealing with right now. Today on Facebook, going back and forth on the town site, was a woman who's got a real situation with water, and everybody's chiming in. That's a problem. That's a problem in a community, that water is a resource, and we have to make sure that we provide a good quality resource to people on a daily basis, not on a weekly basis, on a daily basis. And you know, we talk about it all the time. We've had water shortages, and we've had water bans summer after summer after summer. I had to replace part of my lawn because I couldn't run my irrigation system. I'm not worried about my lawn, but I'm worried about the people that would naturally grow gardens in the yards that couldn't water them, and then they were allowed to water them with a garden hose. That's, in my opinion, Al, that's the largest challenge that we have going on in this community right now, is we need to continue to move forward, we need to work together, and we need to get that water company purchased.
Let's take a side note, because water company is a topic I do want to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, number one, having Uncle Phil and Jonathan, and even Jamie, but you know, you think about, if I've got to call on somebody, I mean, Phil's got his heart and soul in Milford,
Right.
building, you know, the medical center.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Jonathan has proven himself how many times at Woodland.
Right.
I mean, the first time I've seen a project come in on time and $1 million under budget.
I was going to say money coming back.
Yeah, that was, but you know, you've got people who really are invested. Jamie with the cemetery. I mean, these guys care about Milford.
Right.
And like you say, I don't care if it's a Saturday. I'm picking up the phone, and if Jonathan doesn't answer, I'm calling Debbie, and she'll make him answer.
Right. Right.
So, Amy, let's give you a minute. Water company.
So like I mentioned in our last interview, it sounds really silly to say that you know, a vibrant community needs water, but it just obviously is the case that we need to have good water. And since the town voted to buy the water company, you know, obviously I'm in support of that.
Do you see any new issues coming up besides them wanting $1 billion? I mean, it's been publicly disclosed that they want $150 million.
Right. I could answer that question, but I can't let some of the information I can't let out.
All you can talk about is what's publicly disclosed.
I can tell you we're miles apart, and we're now going into the next step through litigation to see if we can't get everybody back together. One of the things that we did talk about the other night, which was very interesting, is that we really had an agreement with a handshake. And now that's all drifted so far apart. But the firm that's handling it for the town of Milford's doing an outstanding job. It's costly, but they're doing an outstanding job. And their rebuttal now is they're going to bring them back to the table and say, we need to talk.
My biggest concern was always they're going to figure out that maybe they can get more money and hopefully blow up the deal so they can go sell it to a private company for 80.
And there are, just so people know, there are private companies out there purchasing water companies nationally, like in Eversource, and they'll pay a lot of money for it because they'll get it back on the other side.
I disagree. They won't pay. We'll pay.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. Yeah, through rates.
Yeah, because the minute they pay a lot, it's to their advantage to almost overpay.
Right.
Because then they get 10%.
Right.
Markup or whatever, it's got 9% on what they spend.
Right, right.
So the more they spend, the bigger the piece they get back.
Right. You know, and a lot of people don't know, Al, is that, and it's common knowledge, it can be talked about, is like, for example, at the water company, there are 2 wells presently that don't work. And everybody, you know,
Yeah, but
we
they were
talk
going to
about-
work when we had the casino.
Yeah, and to repair those wells is not expensive. And when I say expensive, I don't mean millions. It's nowhere near that. But yet they didn't get done. And so one of the things that's actually come out, and I will speak publicly about this, and I can, one of the things that's come out through this whole process is the mismanagement
No.
of the Milford Water Company.
We could go on forever, but let's go, Amy, number 2 on your hit parade.
Traffic. So I have, I think number 2 on the list, beyond getting more people engaged, is working on the traffic. So specifically, the in and out of Milford, rush hour. So this would be like the 10916, the Dilla Street. That's a issue that I'm passionate about because it really impacts the quality of life of Milford residents, and I know it's not something that the selectmen feel like that they can handle. So all the traffic studies that have been done are pushed aside, and we're focused on other things. And to me, we need to stay focused on the traffic issue, which is such a big quality of life for Milford.
But again, any ideas on what we do?
Well, I mean, we've paid so much money to have all the traffic studies done. So my plan is to revive them. I don't know how we're going to solve that problem, but we're going to solve that problem, because to me, it touches the quality of life of every citizen in Milford. It restricts our growth, and just not addressing it isn't really an option.
Michael, any comments on traffic?
That traffic has been something that's been talked about in this community
Since the bypass road.
Since the bypass road, since I arrived in town. And, I can remember years ago I had a senior police officer say to me, you want to fix the traffic on Route 16 from 109 to the Gibbs gas station? At 4 to 4:30 in the afternoon, drop a police officer in that intersection directing traffic. Let the lights flash and let them just direct traffic and let the traffic flow. There's been so many studies done about it, Al. The bottom line is there's a lot of traffic in this community. The roads are not equipped to handle them. As you know, I drive up to Mendon and out of Mendon every single day, and there's mornings where I come through the traffic light at Cumberland Farms in Hopedale, heading to Mendon, and the traffic that's going to be coming through Milford is up over the hill and beyond the drive-in. That's the kind of traffic that flows down Route 16 in the morning, and then going back is the exact same concern. And so everybody talks about now that, of course, Kevin has bought Barry's, and what's he going to do, what's he going to do, what's he going to do? Who knows what's he going to do, but we all know that,
Barry's?
yeah, the golfing place.
I'm just saying, some people may not know.
And it was in the paper, it's common knowledge, it can be talked about, but we know that somehow up there are people that are exiting the dealerships that sometimes will wait 15 minutes, whether it's in the morning with the traffic coming eastbound or at night with the traffic going westbound. So, that's
I
how
didn't know
much.
there were that many cars in Mendon.
But you got to remember, they're all commuting out of Douglas, Uxbridge, Millville, Blackstone.
Oh, and they're all coming down 16.
All coming down Route 16. Some of them to get out to 495. Some of them go down the back way, down through Bellingham to get out on that side of 495. The traffic is, when you live it every single day, but again, how do you fix the traffic? To Amy's point, there's been surveys done over and over and over again, and it's a serious problem. I say it's a serious safety problem, because when you sit on Route 16 again from 109 to the Gibbs gas station.
Oh, that dang intersection by...
And engine 1 comes roaring out of Birch Street. That's a serious problem.
I was going to say, that one intersection at 109 and 16, I had the pleasure of sitting there for, I think, 3 years trying to get through the...
Yeah, and there's a great big sign that says, do not block the intersection.
Well, I was one that got into the intersection, and then, Mezzafressin light went red. Do not block. I'm sorry. It was green when I got in the intersection.
I saw the other night for the first time. I never realized that Route 16 was a 4-lane highway. So it was so bad that people were coming out of 109 onto Route 16 by Enterprise, So there's that natural line. All of a sudden, a car comes out, pulls alongside, is running down alongside the cars that are lined up. So what does the person behind that car do? Follows, follows, follows. So now you got 2 lines of traffic heading westbound outside the Hyundai dealership. That's the first I've ever seen that.
That's new to me, too.
Yeah.
Michael, your second item.
Police chief. It's a major problem. Director of your public safety. As you know, we formed the search committee. We're trying to get our first meeting set up for March 12th. It's a big concern for the people in the town of Milford when you have to replace your police chief. And you know, as everybody knows, it's a national search, and you know, it's not just a local search; it's a national search, and it's going to be a lot of work, but it's a very, very important role. And the police chief that comes into this community, and I give Tom O'Laughlin a lot of credit for that. And when I say this community, we just appointed 2 months ago, 3 months ago, maybe 6 new police officers, and they're all from Milford. One young gentleman just moved over the Bellingham line to buy a house, but he's a Milford person. And I give Tom a lot of credit because when I asked him about it, he said, you want people that are policing in your community that understand your cultures. And he said, what you don't want to be doing is you don't want to go into a situation and not understand the culture. And he said to me, he says, Michael, it's very easy to pull somebody out of a cruiser and put handcuffs on them. It's a lot harder to figure out what's going on. And so we need to bring, if when we get to that point, and when we're hiring the new police chief, whoever he or she is, we need to make sure that they understand the culture of this community, the culture that Tom created in his department so that it continues and follows on. So the second biggest concern that I see in this community right now is looking in the replacement of our current police chief when the time comes.
I'm going to come back with a basic question of what you just said. Do we need to? But Amy, any comments on replacing the police chief?
Well, I think I'm not really in the loop on all the reasons why we need to replace the police chief. So, you know, if we have a police chief vacancy, then I'm a big supporter of filling that. So I can't disagree with anything.
Fundamental
that Mike
question.
said.
You said if we need to replace the police chief. People in Milford are saying, why do we need to? You may be limited as to what you can say because of all the lawsuits.
Everybody knows my stance on Tom O'Laughlin, and I'm not gonna hide it. And I can tell you personally things that I've been involved in the last 6 months. So the Thanksgiving dinner at the senior center, whole bunch of very dedicated people from the community go down and volunteer their time. There's 175 people there this year. And all day long I got thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And Tom was there. And I saw Tom interacting with people. I saw him giving out his cell phone number. I had a gentleman reach out to me one day. He said, Mr. Walsh, he said, you don't know me, but I know you, and I voted for you. I said, well, thank you very much. But a sad situation. He said to me, I lost my 24-year-old son to a drug overdose. And he said the day of his funeral, he said the doorbell rang. He said, I opened up the doorbell, and just like you, I'd never met the police chief, but I knew him from seeing him in the newspapers. And he said to me, do you have a minute? And I said, yeah. And he came into my house and he said to me, I'm so sorry that I and my department could not do more for your son. He said he took a business card out of his wallet, he wrote his cell phone number on it, and he handed it to me, and he said, I'm up most nights all night long anyway. If you want to talk, give me a call. And Al, the stories just keep going and going.
Well, I mean, when you think about it, in Milford we've had two times that we've stood up and talked about our police department as a community. Now, when you think of the protests that you read about across the country, I feel pretty proud that both demonstrations have been to say thank you to our police department. I mean, that's something that I don't think happens in a lot of parts of the country.
Al, he got 100% vote from his rank and
Yeah,
file.
his people don't like him, do they?
100%. Most people, most police chiefs are lucky to get 80. He got 100. But just another great story. I had a nurse tell me this story. He showed up at the emergency room one night. They had brought a young girl in. Thank God they revived her with Narcan. And he said to the nurse's station, he said, "You mind if I go talk to her?" And he said, "No, you're the chief of police." And I don't know exactly what was said, but I got a pretty good idea. And what he said is, if you promise that you'll go to rehab, if I have to, I'll drive you myself.
Well, in the spirit of candidness and transparency, the man saved my mother's life, doing the Heimlich on her when we were at a graduation party. I mean, his son and my daughter used to drive to the school. So I think the issue people are having is they're saying, well, everything we see is positive. So why do we need to replace him? And I don't know if you can answer that because of the lawsuits, but food for thought. Right. Amy, the third one.
So my third one, I come from a background in business, so I've over 10 years, success in creating business relationships, strategic business relationships. So I know the effort that you have to go through in order to, create business, but also know the benefit that it brings when you do have a successful business. So I want to bring business into Milford. So, small businesses, create entrepreneurial businesses opportunities here. Business is a way to generate additional tax revenue for us. One way to, create a town that doesn't have so much conflict over, what programs to cut is if we can increase our tax revenue. So I'm very interested in creating more opportunities for business in Milford. And I would do this by going to the existing business members of our community. So, not all of our local businesses are humongous. They make a big impact on our town and getting people engaged in our town. So like I said, the first priority for me is to get more people engaged. But how do we do that, right? That's impossible for us to figure out. I'm sure, we'd all like to have more people involved. But the business owners, by how they interact with the public, by the services that they provide, they generate relationships with Milfordians who are not feeling as though they're super connected to the town. So I think if I focus on business, which is an area I'm really strong in, and help to get more people in, more businesses in, that is going to help with the primary objective to get more people.
Any idea how we do that?
Oh, okay. So it's a really hard thing to do. There's no single one thing that I
no
could
magic
do.
bullet.
No magic bullet. But if you know what you're doing and you're looking to grow business, the first thing that I would do, which is I've had a lot of experience this, is you go to the business owners who are here, who are participating, and you develop relationships with them. And then that begets additional relationships and makes the culture such that new businesses will want to come here. So we have to, first and foremost, set that as a primary objective. Then we have to stay focused on it, and that's how you get there.
Michael, any comments on bringing new business in?
I think Milford does an outstanding job of bringing new business in. We got the new industrial park going in off of 85. We're very pro-business, as you know, well, being on the finance committee. We're always offering TIFs to companies that want to come here. Look at this, Amazon.
Now, you bring up the word TIF. Seems to be controversial because a lot of people don't understand. What is a TIF and why? To TIF or not to TIF?
I encourage it. Because
why?
For an example, as you know, we offered a TIF to the power company on down by the old bottle plant. And every year they write us a check for $1 million, correct? Well, if that's not worth offering a company a TIF, but you look at the new industrial park that's going in off at 85, you drive up through where Waters Corporation is, and you look at all the businesses that are flourishing up there. Drive up Fortune Boulevard. what's going on in Fortune Boulevard right now. So why would you, first of all, we do a great job of attracting companies to Milford, and I know it's because we have 2 exits off of 495. That new industrial park is going to be amazing. The first building isn't even done yet, and it's already rented out because it's right off of 495. So if we offer these TIFs to continue to bring these people to our community who do in fact pay tax dollars, it's the right thing to do. And that's why, and I don't mean to keep going back to you as a finance committee man, but you understand it. That's one of the, not only because of the department heads and the people that serve on committees are so dedicated to this community, it's also because we are pro-business, and that's why this community is financially in very, very good shape.
Any comments on TIFs?
Yeah, we don't agree perfectly on TIFs. So I think that you know, that you must take a balanced approach to this, and that it can easily be a race to the bottom when everybody is promoting and they have a standard policy, and we really need to be careful about that. I'm supportive of TIFs, but I won't have I wouldn't have like a firm stance that this would be what I do all the time. Every business is different. We do need to be careful about what we do to incentivize people to come here. It isn't always that they're looking for. They might need some other kind of support. So I have done a lot of negotiations in my career, and I never I don't give away the store at the first opportunity, because then there's nothing left. So look to figure out what that business is interested in, and then offer them the kind of incentives that they need. More often than not, a straight financial incentive isn't what they're looking for.
Well, I think a lot of times people get confused because when they think of TIFs, they say, okay, so you're cutting a company's taxes. And I don't think we've done that in the past. And I'm all for a TIF that brings in a new building. Mm-hmm. Because even if the company folds up, like we gave a TIF a few years ago, a 7-year or 10-year TIF to bring in a new building for a company. They built the building, and 3 years later they moved to Florida. And everybody was like, see, the TIF didn't work. And I was like, wait a minute, time out. The building's still here.
Right.
So somebody's paying taxes
Right.
on that new building that we never had. And by the way, now that they've left, the TIF is null and void. Correct. Now somebody's paying full price. So I'm comfortable if you say, I'm paying $1 now and I'm going to build a building and I'll pay $2. Even if I only get 50 cents of that extra $1 for a few years, I'm locked into that $2 for the rest of eternity.
Right.
So, you know, I just want people to understand the TIF is not taking a company and giving them a tax break for nothing. It's just kind of giving them a discount on the incremental taxes they'll pay for a short period of time.
Al,
It's one tool we have in our toolbox, and it's a valuable tool. It can be very useful.
Oh, you're absolutely right. It's not reach for the discount. You know, whatever that TV is, reach for the discount gun.
Yep.
You can't reach for the discount because
Right.
that may not be.
Right.
If you don't need a TIF, don't give one.
Right.
I was going to use as an example, Al, very locally here in the next town over to us is EMC Dell. There's one brand new building down towards the end of South Street that never,
You know,
ever
15 years ago, because
had
I
a
was at
desk in it.
25 South Street, and they built that building, and we were all worried about the extra traffic, and I drove by it tonight. It's still empty.
still empty. And the town of Hopkinton, you make a valid point, is getting some very well-paid tax revenue on that building. Forget some of the other buildings as they start transitioning people who are going to Texas or whatever, but those buildings are still there and they're still going to be paying
Somebody's going to
tax.
pay for them.
Someone is.
And I can wrap my arms around a tax bill. It's easy to calculate. Telling me the economic impact of X new employees, I find it harder to understand. But if I know you're paying, $100 of taxes on that building forever, that's an easy one.
Yep.
Michael, you're third.
My third would be a couple. You and I spoke about it the night I was on the show, And the Board of Selectmen doesn't really have a lot of jurisdiction in it, although we will be involved in it. The school committee has control over it. It's down the road a little ways, the high school. It's the white elephant in the room.
School coming.
Yeah, we better start talking about it. And as you know, sitting on the Finance Committee again and in the Board of Selectmen, you know, we're looking at it, you know, and I know the school committee is looking at it, but it really starts to need to get ramped up now. Are we renovating? Are we building new? If we build new, where are we going to build new? And, you know, and so.
Now, seriously, I mean, when we talked about Woodland, we played this little game of, are we renovating or are we building?
Right.
And it was obvious we had to build. I mean, think about Brookside. We had to build half a school because we didn't have a place to put 300 kids. Woodland came and I laughed. I said, we'll build new because where are we going to put 700?
Right.
Now, if you could find a footprint big enough for Milford High, the only place I can think of is Asylum Street, but
What do you do with the new sports complex? What do you do with the new football field? What do you do with the new girls softball fields? What do you do with the new restrooms and refreshment stands and
everything we've put in.
what do you do with all? You're not going to walk away from all that.
So I'm laughing, saying, you know, I saw in the paper, we want to do the high school in 5 years, do Memorial in 3, and then Stacy 3 after. And I sat there and I said, boy, can we do world peace in the middle of that?
Yeah.
I mean, I was pretty proud that we did Woodland, $60 million school, without using profanity like debt exclusion.
Yeah.
But
Override.
Even worse profanity. But I will talk about that later. But when you think about it, the school was built, we moved in 73. I was in the first class there.
1973.
We haven't really touched it. But it's a bunker.
Right.
So I can see renovating it, but I can't imagine scrapping everything we have and starting new.
But that's one of the problems, Al, and we talk about it all the time now that we employ Rob Quinn in this community. That's a valid point. We spend millions of dollars building these schools or building these buildings, and for years we don't do anything to them except cut the lawn. And you think about it, when you buy your own home or you build your own home, every year you're doing a little something to keep it up, whether it's windows, painting, or...
I wish it was only a little something.
Yeah, but every year you're doing something to your own home, but yet we build these schools and these buildings, particularly Milford High School. 1973, that building was state-of-the-art. If you remember, that's one of the main reasons why St. Mary's High School closed, because so many children
transferred
over because what it had to offer, what they couldn't offer at St. Mary's High School, okay? But then 40 years down the road, you know, it's, now you're looking at saying, now what are we gonna do with it? What are we gonna do with it? And Rob Quinn has done an outstanding job in the time that he's been here. And when I first got on the school committee, I went to the high school and he took me on a tour, and he single-handedly showed me different things in that building that weren't working when he arrived because somebody had taken a valve out, put some mechanics wire on it, we don't need that. And he had to go in and repair all these things, and now he's got all the school buildings, you know, up so that they're running properly, and he's maintaining them on a yearly basis. And every summer, he's got his projects all laid out.
I was so happy when Rob Quinn proved me wrong, because I was on the selection committee, and I was all for him, but I said, here's the only issue I have. This guy's going to figure out how much he's really worth, and we're never going to keep him, because he is just a rock star. And I'm so glad I was wrong and that he's still here.
Right.
You know, I wanted him, I voted for him, but I said, let's make sure we understand he's too valuable. I don't know how we're going to keep him.
Right.
Amy, comments on the high school?
Yeah, I don't really have anything additional to say. I think that we, need to be planning for a new high school.
Let's start out with.
Although I'd say I love the bank program and the sort of like the co-op, the co-op opportunities that we provide. That's outstanding.
We're doing a lot with what we have.
Where do you get to do that? I mean, that's really, I'd love to see more of that real training and the involvement that we have with the banks to facilitate that. That's just, that epitomizes to me, what the engaged Milford community and, what can be accomplished, with that, and then I look and say if we can get even more people involved, like what better could we do?
Okay, I'm going to ask you about the use of profanity in our finances. And for anybody who hasn't heard, the most profane words I know of are 2.5 override and debt exclusion. What's your view on 2.5 overrides?
So I'm a taxpayer in addition to a candidate for Board of Selectmen. So I'm not a fan of taxes, and but myself, like many people that I know, if there's value, perceived value based on what you're contributing to your town, it's so much easier to write that check. It's, I can't imagine what it would be right now, but if there's a strategic need which would require us to make that sort of decision, I would talk to the financial stewards that we have in town to figure out, if that's the right move. And then if it turned out that that was the most strategic thing, we really needed to do it, then I would be in support of it.
Michael, 2.5 override and debt exclusion.
Not going to back away from it. The night I was on your show, I answered I would not be in favor of it. The town of Milford has never had a 2.5 override. And I use as an example that when I first got on the school committee, if you remember, Al, and you were on the finance committee, that was the year that 18 teachers and the finance committee and the school committee got together and worked very, very hard and kept all 18 of those teachers employed, okay, without doing any kind of an override, because we weren't going to do an override, which meant those 18 teachers were going to be, on the street. Well, by working together as a school committee and a finance committee, and we realized that if they did in fact go out, what we would be contributing to their unemployment, it was in their benefit packages, it was better for us to figure out a way as two committees to keep those people
But if you
gainfully
think
employed.
about it, what gave us the leverage was Milford.
Absolutely.
I've never heard of a union, because, the unions have, the impression that the school unions will eat their young.
Right.
Well, in a lot of towns around us, because they ran into the same budget cuts, if you remember, they deferred their raise. Finance committee was against it because they said, if we can't afford it now, how are we going to afford a double raise?
First year I was on, 0.
And the union came back and said, okay, we'll cut you a deal. We will give up our raise if you promise us that all the money we forego goes to saving our teachers. And it was funny because as a FinCom, we had to say, look, all we can promise is we'll do our best to propose it with the selectmen at town meeting. But we couldn't guarantee them because, FinCom, most influential, powerless people in the group, we don't even get a vote.
Right.
Oh, we get 1 vote, 1 out of 200.
Right, but I tell this story, Alan, and that's a valid point where sometimes there's criticism about the administrators and the teachers in the Milford Public Schools in that they don't work together, and like you just said, they want to eat the young. That same time, if you remember right, our varsity football coach, because of bumping rights, was going to end up as a gym teacher at the Woodland Elementary School. And through conversation and people, sitting down at a table and working things out, we were able to shift things around enough so that we could keep him in the high school where he should be as a phys ed teacher coaching varsity football. But that's an example of how people in this community that work and live in this community truly do work together. They really, really do, and especially in the school district.
Next question, levy limit. You get the first shot at it.
Mm-hmm.
Controversial, because I've had people come up and say, every year for the past, I can't remember how many years, we've not taxed to the levy limit. We've given $1.5 million to $2.5 million back.
Mm-hmm.
I've even had people say we're ruining the town because we're not spending the money. How do you feel about not taxing to the levy limit and putting money back towards the taxes?
I think it's a good thing, and I'm going to give you an example. And again, I understand because of where I sit and where I had been, there's some conversation that we are not funding per capita student money like other communities in our area. Well, just because the other communities are doing it, Al, doesn't mean it's right. And you got to build a business plan. And I'm not saying that they're not doing that. I've been 2 years out of the school committee. But what I'm saying is you can't just go on the state website and say the town, I'm just going to throw a number out there, the town of Hopkinton spending, $18,000 per student, and the town of Milford is only spending 14. That's not good enough. You need to sit down and say, okay, where is the difference? And as you know, 3 years ago, we developed a marketing program at Milford High School because, in fact, we were students going to St. John's, students going to BVT and things like that. And when Joe Marias, who was instrumental in putting it together, okay, and brought seniors to the 8th grade when the 8th grade was still standalone, okay, and then brought those 8th graders to the high school, okay, and then had a night for the parents to come in, and when you walked around and what you heard was, I never knew they offered this much at Milford High. We offer a lot in this school district. We offer a lot. And so, I get a kick out of it. Everybody's talking right now. You did it again. You raised my taxes. And I'm like, I raised your taxes. Yep, you raised my taxes. And I say, well, town meeting gave you back $1.5 million. So what if you didn't get that? What would your tax bill really be? So I think the simplest way to answer that question is, why tax to the levy limit if you don't have to? If you don't have to.
Amy, levy limit.
Yeah, so I think that is a complicated question, which, people would be on opposite ends of the spectrum answering that, and people would be right. The person that's like, oh yeah, I want all that money back in taxes. And then, the person over here is like, no, I want you to spend it because it's going to improve the town. Like, both of those people are right. Like, and we really want more people out saying like where they fall on that line, because, there's no right or wrong answer to that question. But here in Milford, we have a well thought out plan about how we deal with money, and it's been developed over a long period of time. And, we decided that we think it's better to give money back, and that, and that works for us. And so, is that going to be the way we always think about it? I don't really know. But it's the way we think about it now, and I'm not really interested in coming in and messing up the way that we handle things that work so well. You have to be really careful when you enter a system to not interrupt the system. Figure out where you might be able to bring some value or what a fresh view could add to the system, but don't mess with the system. That's how I feel about it.
Fundamental. Go ahead.
What's very important, Al, and you understand this, is that when you're on the Board of Selectmen, when you sit on the school committee, when you sit on the finance committee, when you sit on the personnel board, when you sit on different committees in this community, and you're making decisions, you have to remember that those decisions are affecting people of many different ages, many different income levels, and so you have to keep that in mind. And so when you just for an example, when you say, we're going to tax to the levy limit, and to a guy like me, oh well, but what about to the poor elderly person that's living on Social Security, trying to stay in their house, trying to maintain and keep their car, trying to pay their prescription bills, which are going out of sight? Yeah, so when you give some of that tax money back at the end of the year, so it lowers their incoming tax bill, and it might be as simple as $300 or $400, Al. To some people,
$300 or $400 could make the difference of them eating or buying their meds.
Right.
And we were worried about 80, and I got criticized when they said $80 is nothing.
Right. You have to always keep that in the forefront of your mind, is when you're making those decisions. That's why I said earlier in the show, as a school committee member, I'm spending, back in the day it was $43 million. By the time I left, it was $46 million. And as a selectman, I'm spending $100 million. But I'm making decisions that directly impact people, whether it's children in school, what people are paying in property taxes, and how it affects their life. And that's what you got to always keep in the forefront of your mind.
I guess you get the next one. Fundamental question. Average tax bill in Milford's around $5,000.
Mm-hmm.
Am I getting good value for my money?
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. And you know, there's two things I always say. If you criticize the Milford Public Schools, you've never been in the Milford Public Schools. And I say to people like you, I've been here over 30, but you were born and brought up here, and I say, but people who live in this community don't realize how lucky they are to be in this community. And I use as an example, and I'm not looking for sympathy. Whenever I had to call 911 for my wife, in less than a minute and 20 to 40 seconds, Engine 1 was sitting right outside the front door of my house. I've got a state-of-the-art hospital 5 minutes away. We've got a dedicated, full-time police department, dedicated fire department. As you saw the other night at the Selectmen, 2 weeks ago at the Selectmen's meeting, we gave an award away to the dispatcher who spotted the fire, the firefighters that responded, and the policemen that responded at risk their
Wait a minute,
life.
the dispatcher responded too?
He's the one, yes, he was the first one in. And, you know, trash pickup, all the programs that are offered in the schools, and I tell people all the time, it's not just sports. And I know Milford's got a reputation for sports, but it's a lot more than just sports in the town of Milford. And I say, so if your child isn't involved, I don't know what else we could offer between music, art, theater, the sports programs. I mean, it's all here in this community. So do I feel that I get 100% of what I want for my tax dollars? Absolutely. Scotty Christofouli in the highway department. Every time it snows, you got to remember, and I'm not criticizing anybody, but I have to get to Mendon.
$10,000 an inch. I hate Scotty for putting that, I mean, when he put that vision in my mind, every time I hear, like tonight, we're getting 6 inches, immediately, well, there's $60,000 I'm going to get hit with.
But the roads are always in great shape. As you know, Chuck Renault, we gave him 100,000
The
for trees. Now some towns would say, I'll let the limb fall. Not in Milford. We're proactive. Chuck Renault was proactive. He literally knew what trees. I was shocked. I said, this guy's amazing. Does he just run around and number them all? You know, but those are the things. So if you don't think that you get a good value for living in this community, I disagree.
Amy, do we get good value?
I couldn't agree more. So I just did my taxes, and I had a harder time paying my federal tax bill because I am less connected with the value I'm getting at that level. But the Milford taxes, we are so lucky. I live right downtown, so I see that town hall like twice a day.
Pearl Street is dead center.
Dead center, and it's a beautiful building, and when you go in it, it's full of amazing people who are so welcoming and so interested in helping our community. The little guy that drives around, I know that he doesn't hit everywhere in town, but downtown, and he clears our sidewalks so that the kids can walk to school. The trash pickup, that's an amazing value. Everyone can like really realize that. The leave pickup, we all love to hate that because it doesn't happen perfectly on our own schedule. It's such a value, and they do such good work. So there's so much value. I've traveled, like I mentioned, I've traveled all over the world, and so I came back to Milford in August, and it's just given me some perspective about what we have here and how we really need to just notice those things. If you don't have them for a while and you come back, they're just so bright and big that you notice them and you appreciate them. So yeah, I think we get a tremendous value from our taxes.
A tough question to answer, but easy to ask. Immigration, its effects on Milford.
Sure, yeah. So obviously immigration is dealt with at the national policy level. So, but when I think about immigration, I think about Milford. This town was founded by immigrants. We can all agree upon that. And we have a whole new influx of immigrants into our town. I live downtown. I live next to really lovely Brazilian families. Ecuadorian roofers head off in the dozens every morning in the dark, to go like roof Massachusetts for us. And I look at them and I just am connected to my family. My family's Irish, so we came over and we're really unwanted in this country, and now, you know, we're very
Weren't we
welcome.
all at one point or another?
Weren't we all? And so I feel like the way to handle immigration is that each and every one of us needs to find a little bit of grace inside of ourselves to when we think about immigrants, because the rhetoric around immigrants is really discouraging for me to hear, and I feel like there are some bad immigrants that have done some bad things, and like that's not to be ignored. But there's some bad non-immigrants that do bad things all the time, so let's not ignore that either. Like, if we're gonna talk about, you know, the bad things that happened that immigrants did, like let's just keep the conversation real, find a little grace, because it's not that easy to come to this country and work your tail off if the town that you live in wants you out.
Michael, immigration effects in Milford.
I think what's important, Al, for people to understand is that the term immigration, the town of Milford really has no involvement in that at all. That is held and controlled at the federal level.
You mean the selectmen can't deport people to Rhode Island?
No. Immigration is held is handled at the federal level. But what we do and we should do, and you and I have spoken about this, Milford is an immigrant community. It originally was a Yankee community, then came the Irish, then came the Italians, then came the Portuguese, then came the Brazilians, and it just keeps going. So Milford is a multicultural community. And what we have is if a culture, if a nationality is here legally, like your parents came to this country and you and I have had long conversations about it, and they're here legally, then we have a moral obligation as a community to help. And you know, I've had long conversations with friends of mine whose grandparents came from, using Italy as an example, and they checked into the community, and the sisters at Sacred Heart Church in school would say in class, anything that somebody has in their house that they're not using, we need you to bring to school tomorrow. And that's how these people furnish their homes. So we have a moral obligation to help them. We have an obligation to educate them. And when I say educate, I don't mean only in the schools, Al. You got to have a driver's license to drive. I know where you came from, but here you have to have a driver's license, and if I have to, I'll help you. I'll take you there to get your license. I have an obligation to help, but you got to be here legally, and you got to understand the laws. And this is where I give the churches and the community a lot of credit, working with the different communities right now. The Ecuadorian community being our biggest one right now, but this is how.
They're the latest community coming here.
Right. This is our lifestyle. This is how you live within our community, and you have to abide by our laws. And these are the laws. And we welcome you. We welcome you. And you know, I say this all the time, Al. I was in Memorial School one year, and a teacher said to me, "Mr. Walsh, come here a second." And I went over, and she introduced me to this little girl that was in kindergarten. I'll never forget it. She barely could speak English, but she was struggling. And I went back to that school 2 years later and bumped into that little girl. She was speaking English. And if that doesn't make you proud to say that you know, our community is making a difference in this little girl's life, okay? But on the flip side of it, it's the same thing at the high school now. Now we bring a child into the high school that's in 10th grade, okay? Probably the last formal education they had was in the 6th grade. And if you could see the teachers in our high school working with that child to make sure that that child goes across the platform on graduation day. So that's what's important. And sometimes people get mad at me, Al, because when they really get opinionated about it, and I try to stress to them about the importance of if they're here legal, if they're living in our community, if they're living by our laws, okay? And I tell people all the time, when you go home tonight, pull up the Statue of Liberty and read the bottom of it. That's what this great nation was founded on. That's why, and when you go to Kurt Shady's Windows of the World every year, and you walk around that function, two things you hear all night long. We came to this country for a better way of life and to educate our children. And if I asked you the same question now, why did your parents come here?
That was it.
That's exactly what you'd say to me. So it hasn't changed. We just got to make sure that they understand.
Amy, I asked Mike first, so now it comes to you. I'm from Milford. Why should I vote for you?
Yeah, vote for me. We need a fresh voice here in our selectmen. I'm a steward, I'm a lawyer, so I'm a steward for people. I'm a fiduciary, meaning that I can put their interests above my own, and I make smart business decisions, and I know how to enter a complicated existing machinery without it upsetting it too much. But we need a fresh voice. Vote for me.
Michael, I'm from Milford. Why should I vote for you?
Again, I go back to, Al, I've been in this community for over 30 years. I've been involved since the day I got here. I'm dedicated, I'm experienced, I'm hardworking. I have the best interests of the people in this community and this community in my heart on a daily basis. And people who know me and people who are out at functions, they know that I get involved. Last night I was delivering a citation to a doctor from Milford Hospital that's retiring after 25 years. A month ago I delivered the citation to Dr. Tabarelli, gave 40 years of his life to this community. I get involved. I'm at as many meetings, as functions as I can physically get myself to. You know, I'm concerned, I listen, I return phone calls, I return emails. You know, I care about this community, and I think the reason that I would ask people to vote for me on April 2nd to re-elect me to the Board of Selectmen is my dedication, my experience, my knowledge of this community, and my work ethic. You'll never outwork me, never.
Well, I thank both of you for being, unfortunately, the small minority of people who not only talk about making Milford better, but being the minority who stand up and say, I'm willing to work to make it better.
Mm-hmm.
And as always, I won't ask you to vote for either one of these people, but I'll beg you to vote for one of them. Get out on April 2nd. I mean, there's senior center, citizens from Milford. I mean, I love the idea that the candidates are going to the high school to get our kids involved. Get to know these people. Get to know who you feel most comfortable with. And then please, above all, get out and vote. So to our 6 loyal viewers, may God bless. May tomorrow be a better night than tonight. And we'll see you on April 2nd after the election results as we do our live election night. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, Al.
Not too long since I've been home.